Welcome to Your City at Work, your program about local government departments and services. Your City at Work is a production of the City of Oshkosh and Oshkosh Community Media Services.
Thank you for joining us on Your City at Work. I'm your host, Emily Mikowski, and we have a great show lined up for you today with a great topic, which is history here in Oshkosh. So we're right here at City Hall, and I'm joined by David Buck, the principal planner for the City of Oshkosh, and you're going to give us a little bit of background about some of the really cool things that we're going to be seeing today. So David, first of all, thank you for joining us on this beautiful afternoon.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So first of all, we're talking about some of the houses that have won Acanthus Awards. Maybe you can first tell us what exactly an Acanthus Award is.
Sure. Well, not just houses, but Acanthus Awards were instituted in 1981 by the Oshkosh Landmarks Commission, which is our historic preservation commission for the city, to basically honor individuals who have worked to preserve our culture and our history. The awards are really given for kind of three main categories, or three broad categories: identifying and evaluating historic and cultural resources, the actual preservation of the built environment, so your buildings and your sites, and then also broadening knowledge of our culture and our history. So those are kind of the three main focuses of the awards.
You corrected me, it's not just homes, it's buildings, it's architecture here in Oshkosh.
And it's also individuals and organizations who have played a major part in the development of the city. So it's not just structures itself.
Excellent. So really the opportunities are just endless for Acanthus Award recipients.
Correct.
So how many are given out each year?
Well, there's no magic number. I mean, we've had some years where there have been none, some where there's been a lot, but it's generally around 2 to 5 a year.
How does a site or a person or an organization, how do they qualify for an Acanthus Award?
Well, they qualify mainly for the preservation of our culture, of our history. Obviously, for the built environment, it's the proper maintenance or restoration of a historic site. But you could qualify, a good example would be the Northwestern won one year for some of their news articles that focused on the churches of Oshkosh and the history of religion and the churches in Oshkosh. So really, to qualify, it's really promoting our history and preserving our history and our culture.
Wonderful. So I know there's got to be a lot of great stories. We're taking a look at the Acanthus Award recipients for this year. Tell us about what we're going to see over the next half hour.
Well, we got a nice, they're all structures this year for 2015, but kind of a nice broad base. I mean, over the last, since '81, they've given out over 100 Acanthus Awards. Today we're going to see 4. One is a home on the south side, and it's basically for maintenance of the home, so retaining its historic integrity over the last 90 years. We're also going to see a home that was completely restored and reverted back from some inappropriate changes that had happened over time and brought back to its original splendor. We're going to see a commercial property in the same type of state that are moving forward with reverting the building back to its integrity. And the last one we would see is a reuse of a building. It's been repurposed. It was a rail station that's been repurposed to a house, but still preserving its character and its cultural significance. So 4 kind of unique and different types of awardees.
Very exciting. Well, it sounds like we've got a nice variety of things to see today. Last question, why is it important that we're recognizing these places?
Well, there's a lot of reasons why it's important to recognize. First is really to honor the property owners or the individuals who are making that contribution to the community and preserving our culture, and educating our citizens and our young people and everybody, and also giving them a thank you for what they're doing. But it kind of spills over into a couple other points. One is a pride in place. I mean, Oshkosh has a very old and wonderful history, and people are very proud of it and should be very proud of it. And this kind of showcases that these people are keeping that going. But also there's vast economic development benefits to historic preservation and cultural preservation. There's obviously tourism. Our local Main Street districts are very, very popular. Moving into a neighborhood that has nice preserved buildings and a historic integrity kind of gives you that identity. So for honoring these, it's really to try to promote that preservation effort and to reap those benefits that come along with it.
Oh, which is so many benefits, which you just listed there. So we can't wait to get out there and see all these different sites today. So we're going to go ahead and get in the car and take a trip over to the first one.
Wonderful.
So we have reached 2223 Doty Street here at a beautiful little craftsman bungalow. David, tell us what's special about this house? Well, first of all, when was it built?
Well, this, as you said, is a craftsman bungalow, and it's a classic example of a craftsman's bungalow. It was built in 1925, and it was actually built for Dr. Brochet, and hopefully I'm saying his name correctly, Dr. Brochet and his second wife in 25. What's really kind of unique about this house as well is that in its 90 years in existence, it's only had 3 owners. So you had the original owner, an owner that was here for over 50 years, and then the current owners, William and Laura Scott, who have owned it since about 1985.
Wow, amazing. You don't see that very often, that there's that few of owners.
You do not, and that kind of reflects in the care that has been given to the house. So there has not been a lot of changeover. The Acanthus Award for this house was given primarily for one of the most simplest of things, and it's home maintenance. That the home was maintained in its beautiful and sort of pristine condition over the years. So there was no major remodeling, but when they chose to do siding on the house, rather than using vinyl or aluminum, they chose to use wooden siding, cedar siding to match the other sides of the house. They also repaired the pergola in the front here. Retained a lot of the features like the exposed rafter ends, which are very decorative as compared to what you would normally see. Kept the knee brackets and the dormers, but this is your very typical bungalow style home.
And so a lot of the original characteristics, well, pretty much all of the original characteristics of this house have stayed intact thanks to the great upkeep that the owners have given it over the years. Tell us a little bit more about those rafters that you mentioned. They're exposed, but you know, what are they?
Well, those are actually the ends of the trusses that run all the way through the roof of the house, and they were actually decorative because they were each end was trimmed to give it the sort of the arcs and the angles that are with it right now. In a lot of remodeling cases and residing, what they'll do is cover those up because they take a lot of maintenance to paint and to maintain. You know, if there's any kind of wood rot or anything. So it's a lot of times really easy to cover it up. But covering up those little details of these craftsman style house really start to detract from the house itself. What made a lot of these houses really, really popular, they were inexpensive to build, but they used a lot of local materials and a lot of wood. That's in Oshkosh and Sawdust City. And a lot of craftsmanship. So on the outside you can see the details and the craftsmanship. On the inside they relied a lot on full built-ins and leaded gas cabinetry and you know, so you'll see a lot of detail on the inside. We're not going in today, but you'll see those same kind of features on the inside. And it's it's the attention to detail and the attention to detail that these owners kept with the house over the last 90 years.
Yes, and it definitely shows. I mean,
does.
It's just beautiful. Once again, why is it important that people are paying attention to those details and really keeping those things in pristine condition?
Sure, well, a lot of times people will say, you know, the devils are in the details, and you'll hear, you know, death by 1,000 cuts. You know, a little change here, a little change there, over time, over multiple remodelings, will take a beautiful character home and kind of turn it into something that it was not. This home itself acts as a definite pride and place, not only for the owners, but for the whole Doty Street neighborhood, and I would say for the entire city itself. Like I had said, it's a modest home. It's typically would have been a worker's home. You see a lot of bungalows throughout the city and throughout the state, but those are what really give our character to our community. And so as you're driving down the street, you see a lot of these, and you see a lot of this detail and character, and
just
you know,
beautiful.
just shows high quality. Shows a high quality community.
Yes, which again is why you said that they did receive an Acanthus Award. Is just that value to those details and the value that they hold to the history of their home.
Right, and it's a thank you for their attention to detail and pride in their own house and pride for their neighbors in their neighborhood.
Wonderful. Well, it's absolutely beautiful. We're going to take a walk around it and take some closer looks at it. But thanks for telling us a little bit of history on this beautiful home.
Great.
All right, so we've traveled out here to 1039 Algoma Boulevard, a little bit of a quiet area. Here to look at a beautiful little home. And I have Shirley Maddox here from the Landmarks Commission to tell us all about it. So Shirley, thanks for coming out here today with us.
Well, this home is owned by Grady and Kimberly Bullington. They bought the house in 2006. And when they bought it, they realized they had to fix everything. The house was built in 1868. And it's called the John Bethke House, and he lived here for 26 years, and was a laborer at the Payne.
Okay.
And the people that lived here after him were also laborers at the Payne, and until 1916, and that's when William Palmer bought the house. William and Catherine Pearl. And they lived here for 90 years.
Oh my goodness.
And they had a daughter, Florence, and she lived here, and she just recently turned 100.
Oh my goodness.
Yes, so it's a long history with a few families.
Yes, a long history for each of those families too.
Right.
Yeah, so I'm sure a lot of great stories out of this house. So what about this home got it an Acanthus Award?
Well, it's not a dramatic home like, the museums up the street, but it was a worker's home. And for some reason, as these other homes were built, they left this one because people living there took care of it. And Mr. Palmer was a national inspector for the Lumberers Association. So I think there's good bones in the house, and he realized that.
Okay, and so you said this is called a bungalow.
Well, it's a one-story home. I'm not sure in the 1860s they would have called it a bungalow, but it has some of the features. Right. But there's that front gable.
Yes.
And this house, when the Bullingtons bought it, was covered with aluminum siding. And they talked to Terry Labe, who was a restoration contractor here, and he suggested they pull it off to see what's underneath. Well, it was cedar siding. And so if you look at this, we have 1868 wood.
Amazing.
And Grady just wanted to preserve it and save it. And then he found more things like this wonderful paneling in that front gable. So it's just been one little thing after the next. And I suppose you open up the next door and there's another
surprise. So a lot of really cool physical characteristics about this home. You gave us a little bit of background on some of the history, and I know just before we started taping you were telling us how they found a newspaper in one of the walls.
Right. I think if we look back, we'll see that there probably was an addition or two additions. And in one of the walls they found a newspaper from 1929, and whether that was that period or whether they felt it was an important story to keep. But the foundation is kind of interesting. It's cut limestone, and the whole house is sturdy.
A beautiful little home. Any other interesting details about this site?
I think the interesting thing is that the windows, there's this whole panel of windows all the way around. So there's lots of light in the house.
Okay.
And fresh air, because I don't think they probably had air conditioning.
Oh, I doubt that.
And so it's probably a naturally pleasant little house to live in.
Wonderful. And they've obviously done a great job over the years keeping it up, which is one of the reasons that it was an Acanthus Award recipient.
Right, and they're continuing on the inside to take one little project at a time.
Wonderful.
But as we drive this gateway street, this is so important because people coming through the city or visiting very often would come on this street, and this is part of that history.
It really is.
Yeah, so we're grateful to them.
Well, beautiful place. Thanks so much for stopping out here today and showing us.
Okay, well, glad to.
Thanks, Shirley. right, so we're here at 570 North Main Street, what many people know as the Varsity Club, and I'm standing here with Mayor Steve Cummings, and you're going to tell us a little bit about this site. So thanks for joining us out here,
Thank
Steve.
you for having me.
So first of all, we're here at 570 North Main Street. What kind of building is this, and when was it built?
Well, the Landmarks Commission presented one of its 2015 Acanthus Awards to Jeremy West for the commendable restoration project he did on the lower facade of the building. As you said, it's at 570 North Main Street. It is the Varsity Club. It was originally constructed in 1921 as an automobile dealer or showroom known as the Gibson Auto Exchange.
Okay.
And Gibson was the grandfather of John Bergstrom, who has a lot of dealerships now.
Yes.
The building is a contributing structure within Oshkosh's North Main Street Historic District, which was listed in 1996 on both the state and national register of historic places.
Wow. So there's a lot of history behind this building.
A lot of history.
Wasn't always the Varsity Club.
Right.
Really cool story there that you had there. You actually used to deliver newspapers to this site.
I did back in the 1950s. I'm dating myself. The mid 1950s. The building was much different then. It was all plate glass. The door behind us was the original door, and I still recall that there was a white Chevrolet convertible with bright red upholstery in the showroom. That's my one vivid memory of the building. But
oh, how cool is that?
it's been restored. The facade has been restored back to the way it did look when it was first built and into the 1950s.
Okay, let's talk about the significant characteristics of this building that got it the Acanthus Award. We're standing in front of this big, beautiful door, which you just briefly mentioned. Tell us about that.
Right. Well, the owner, Jeremy West, worked closely with the Oshkosh Plan Commission and the Oshkosh Landmarks Commission in the restoration. We helped him locate photos of the original Gibson Auto Exchange, or Gibson Chevrolet. I refer to it as Gibson Chevrolet. But some of the things he did in the restoration, I'll have to check my notes.
Sure.
He did replace the northern double doors, replicating the historic swing-style wood garage doors with windows where the garage service door used to be located. So you drive your car in for service and repair.
That's what that was.
He relocated the formal entrance to the south side of the building and made it more handicap accessible, ADA accessible. And then also, as I mentioned, this was all plate glass at one time, so you could see the cars from the street. He replaced that with the panels, which you'll see closer, all glass to really replicate the original look of the building. So he did a very sympathetic restoration to get the facade of the building very close to the original structure.
Well, you can definitely see the amount of work that's been done to make this a beautiful historic building. And I just have to say, the door is just absolutely beautiful. I think that's my favorite part. Any other interesting details about this building that we could know?
I think what the interesting detail is, through Jeremy's efforts, he's added a lot of value to his building as far as the historic district of the 400 and 500 block of downtown Oshkosh. And we're hoping he has plans to put a historic plaque in the building indicating when it was constructed and the name of it, which it'll be part of the Landmarks Commission program for historic plaques and signage. But I think it goes to show that if you work closely with the Plan Commission, Landmarks Commission, they can really walk you through the process and give you what you want in a it's not a rehab, it's really a renovation, but taken back to its original look, using modern materials. I mean, he just did a great job, and as we work with other people on Main Street, we hope to return the Main Street, the downtown, to the way it looked decades ago.
Oh, definitely.
It's part of our whole historic tourism program.
And so that's really why the Varsity Club, this site here, was awarded an Acanthus Award.
Exactly.
Is for the work that they've done to keep this historic aspect going.
To bring the facade back to its original life.
Well, wonderful. Well, thanks for telling us a little bit of history about this building, and we're going to go on to our next site. So thanks, Steve.
Looking forward to it. Thank you.
So now we are at 516 West 18th Avenue, here at a reformed house. It's now a residential home, but tell us a little bit about this building, Shirley.
Well, this is kind of a recent building, 1951. This Sioux Line railway station was built to replace one that had been downtown for many, many years. And the Soo Line Company hired McHenry and Kraft of Minneapolis to design this, and they called it a ranch building, which was kind of interesting. But it's a sturdy, long building, 24 wide by 84 long, and this was the place where people came to board the Soo Line for 45 years.
Just amazing. You'd never,
Yes.
I mean, they have it's really unique how they have the railroad crossing sign on the home, but you never think of that just driving by.
Nope.
Yeah,
No.
so you gave us a little bit of the story behind this building, but when was it refurbished to be a residential home?
Okay, I think in 1996 the Soo Line discontinued the railway, tore up the tracks, and boarded up the windows, bolted the doors, and that was it.
Really?
And Mickey and Lois Noon decided that they wanted to move into a building that was like a reuse from an industrial or some different kind of building. And so this caught their eye, and they spent 3 years planning, researching, and they hired Stephen Grease, who was an architect in Neenah that did the Neenah Depot up there, and they started the renovation. They tried to save as much as they could. They only moved one wall 4 feet.
Really?
Other than that, everything's maintained the same footprint. They hired the craftsmen that had worked for Jeske years ago when it was first constructed in 1951. Well, these old fellows wanted to come back and work on this.
Wow.
Yeah.
And it's absolutely beautiful. It's in mint condition, you could say, really. I know we were talking about some of the cool things that they have inside, like the ticket counters and things like that. But what are some of the other physical characteristics that you can see from the outside that we're looking at?
Right. Well, I suppose the red Wisconsin brick,
Okay.
and they identified it as Wisconsin brick. The tall chimney, I think, is kind of a landmark in this area. The banks of windows all the way around, the light comes in, and on the other side, where the bank of windows are the kitchen, let's see, the dispatcher could see out of a window that was built out, so they could see the train coming.
Oh.
And so that is still there.
Oh, wow.
And on the outside, let's see, they've reused some of the tiles from inside and built a passenger bench outside. But they restored the baggage area in the back, and that was Mickey and Lois's bedroom. The front is their living room, which was the waiting room.
Wow.
And so it's a very simple building, and they've adapted to that.
Yes. And so the reason that this building received an Acanthus Award is really the repurpose of it.
Absolutely. Reuse is so important, and that takes creativity.
Oh, definitely.
Because a lot of people will look at it and they'll say, what do you do with a train station? And these people said, we've got an idea.
Well, how cool. Such a cool history and story behind this building. So,
And I think it's an important part of the neighborhood. You know, it's a harkens back to when kids would be crossing the tracks, and so it's still here, and that's so important.
yes, very important to hold on to that history here in Oshkosh. that
Yeah,
all
and we
love so
call
much.
that place-based history, which I
Place-based
think is a
history.
good way to describe what this does.
Definitely. Well, Shirley, thanks for taking us out to this place-based history.
Thank you, thank you.
All right, so we're back here at City Hall where we started. We saw 4 amazing sites that are Acanthus Award winners. And David, I just have to say thanks so much for carting us around today and showing
Yeah.
us all these sites.
Well, thanks for having me.
So if
Excellent.
someone's interested in nominating or if they think they might qualify for an Acanthus Award, what do they have to do?
Sure, they can contact any of the landmarks commissioners, and their phone numbers are on our city website, or they can contact me individually, David Buck. My phone number is 920-236-5062. So if you have yourself or a neighbor or an organization that you know have done something great for historic preservation for the city, let us know, and they'll be taken into consideration for an Acanthus Award.
Definitely. So city website, ci.oshkosh.wi.us. Also, the Planning Services Division does have a Facebook page that you can always check out for updates within planning as well.
Yes.
That's going to do it for this episode of Your City at Work. Thanks again for joining us. As always, you can find more information about OCMS on OshkoshCommunityMedia.org or by searching Oshkosh Community Media Services on YouTube.com. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.